Okay, the purpose of this presentation is to talk briefly about the Conceptual Change chapter. Some of you may have seen the video A Private Universe, which is just a fantastic video to really kind of demonstrate the idea of conceptual change. The picture in the lower left is a graduate of Harvard, and one of the things they did during this very short video about conceptual change was to ask Harvard graduates things like what causes the change of seasons, and many of them talked about how they had this concept of the path of the Earth around the sun as being elliptical, and so summer was when the Earth was closer to the sun, and winter was when the Earth was further from the sun. So here, I mean, they chose to interview Harvard graduates because Harvard's supposed to be one of the best schools in the country. The students who go there are some of the brightest and most educated students in our country, and yet they interviewed these people, and not only graduates but faculty, and they all had these basic science misconceptions. And the latter part of the video looks at this girl who's up in the top of this particular screen, and her concept of the orbit of the planets, and they use a specific conceptual change strategy to help her develop a more robust explanation for the way the Earth revolves around the sun. She had this kind of curly Q thing in it, and so they go through this whole process, and she seems to have it, but when you really push her, she falls right back to her curly Q. So the Earth kind of does this curly Q limacon kind of path around the sun, and she's a really bright young woman, and just it's difficult to pull off, and it's amazing to watch this, because I think that a lot of us teach things thinking that we're having an impact, and it goes in and goes right out, because it's not part of the way they understand things. Okay. All right. Well, I think one of the things that I think happens with concepts is it gets to this belief level. Once you take a piece of knowledge and transform it into a belief, it becomes so entrenched it's difficult to change. And simply presenting a new theory or telling the learner that her view is wrong will not result in change. So if you walk into your science class believing that the cause of summer is that when the Earth is closer to the sun, I can tell you it has to do with the direct and indirect rays from the sun, but that won't necessarily change it. It has to do with the tilt of the Earth, and so. But if I just tell you that, most of your students will not change. Okay. So again, here's something taken out of the information processing chapter, talking about how we have this complicated network of ideas about a particular concept, in this case birds, and how we have elements, characteristics of birds, we have instances of birds, we have episodic memory for birds, we have all this stuff tightly woven together about birds. And so if any of it, if it's fundamentally incorrect, it's difficult to just tell you something that will change it, because it's too tightly woven together. Here's just a screen capture of somebody's web for the concept of what a teacher is, and so again, the idea is that it's complex, that there's lots of detail in it. All right, so conceptual change. It's not just inserting a new node into the memory. It's difficult to unweave the elements of it. It takes work. It's active work like that found in most of the inquiry-based models. Again, another plausible explanation for how to bring about conceptual change would not come from the information processing perspective, but from a Piagetian perspective, where you have schemas for understanding thing. You have a schema for bird, and what you need to do is bring about a state of disequilibration so that you're uncomfortable with your schema for bird, and need to have an accommodation be made to fix that. Okay, so start with, here's the conceptual change model, 3-step model. Reveal students' preconceptions. This is exposing event. This is where you say, here's what my schema is. Here's my network of ideas on this particular concept. Then you need to create a conceptual conflict. You need to create the state of disequilibration. And then once you have them in the state of disequilibration, as an organism, they want to get back to this where everything's nice and calm and equilibrated, if I could use that word. And so what you do is you encourage them to develop a revised or new schemata about the situation or phenomenon in question. All right, so preconceptions. How do you bring those out? Well, you can have them draw a picture. You can have them write about the theory. They can talk about the theory. They can make a presentation. You can have them form into small groups and discuss their current conceptions, and also begin to articulate how intelligible, how fruitful their conceptions are within the group. Compare and contrast each other's viewpoints. So it would be good to realize that everybody has a different way of viewing that particular concept. Then you need to create conflict. You can do this as a whole class exposure. Unfortunately, that could create that could be publicly humiliating. You don't want to humiliate your learners. You don't want to humiliate the students. But you need to have some kind of thing that creates this state of disequilibration. And so some of the things you could do is you could do an experiment if that will create that disequilibration. You can give them anomalous data. You can do things that are you doing it, or you can have them do stuff that creates that discrepant event. And again, this can create, it may take quite a bit of time to have them actually draw their concepts into the state of disequilibration. It could take weeks. And then once they're in the state of disequilibration, that's where you then you get them to talk about what issues are raised by the discrepant event, and how that gets them to think differently, to reflect on the new data, reflect on how that makes them change the way they do this. You really need to have time to discuss ideas with others. It's really an important part of the developing of a new concept. And again, when we talked about constructionism, we talked about the importance of not just constructing the thing that you're constructing, but to have conversations about it. And so here's another perspective on that really points to the importance of having conversations about the things that you're engaged in. Nothing is permanent except change. That's my closing slide for this, because conceptual change is difficult to bring about. It's probably even more difficult to bring about with adult learners. When you want to change your business model, it's really difficult to change. If you're teaching in the public sector, in healthcare or in with teachers, it's difficult to bring about change. And if you want to change, you want to have them have a new and improved and different perspective on how to teach or how to provide health care, it's difficult to pull off. Nothing's permanent except change, and change is difficult is probably another truism. Okay, you really ought to look at the chapter. It's well written, and you ought to think about it. There's a parallel theory to conceptual change, by the way, in the adult educational literature called transformative learning, and I don't have a chapter on that, but the basic elements are still the same. You need to have them talk about their ideas. You need to create a disequilibration. You need a discrepant event, and then to get them to engage in conversations and try to resolve the new information within their existing structures. So either one of them will help you with trying to bring about conceptual change. Okay? I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.